Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. We're just going to give it a minute to start for everybody to join from the waiting room. All right. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. I'm going to turn it over to Nick now to kick things off.
Good morning from Park City, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Nick Sargent. I'm the president of SIA, your association to helping the winter outdoor industry thrive. As we kick off our new membership season, we're putting a huge focus and effort on education, from town halls to workshops, and providing access to experts, mentors, and others. We're covering a wide breadth of topics aimed at helping grow your business. We're looking forward to sharing the full schedule of education events with you, and we launch new events next week. Keep an eye out after the 4th of July holiday. Today's discussion, opportunities for winter outdoor recreation for the 2021 season and beyond. This is the 10th of our Town Hall series. To start, I want to introduce our 4 panelists. Past chair and industry veteran Mike Adams, VP Winter Sports Equipment at Amherst Sports Americas. Constance Beverley, CEO of Share Winter Foundation. Tyler LaMotte, Chief Brand Officer at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. And Thomas Winter, VP of Merchandising at Kristin Sports. Thank you for joining. Last, I want to introduce Kristin Carpenter. She's been with us along this journey for all 10 of these, and she is the founder and CEO of Verde Brand Communications. Kristin has been a key player in these Town Hall series. The format this week will be a discussion amongst our panelists, and then we'll have a short Q&A session at the end. If you have a question during this panel, please be sure just to type it in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. We'll answer as many questions as we can and get to these if they are fitting during the panel discussion. Thanks again for joining us, and let me kick this off with Kristin now. Kristin, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. It's awesome to be here with you today, and we have a very awesome panel, all-star panel. This topic today is something that I know everybody, as we're kind of starting to migrate out of our homes after being in isolation and enjoy the summer, everybody I'm sure has seen just an incredible influx of people getting outdoors. And we wanted to pull a panel together to enable us to prepare and get as much preparation as possible, which of course is a bit of a moving target today, in terms of preparing to catch and collect and keep the attention of this new outdoor enthusiast, and also obviously introduce our existing core enthusiasts to new activities this winter, because people just really seem to be gravitating to the outdoor recreation world. So today we are here to talk about the opportunity. If you know the adage, there's a lot of opportunity in the face of challenge, and if that's true, we should be sitting on a ton of opportunity right now this coming winter. And I wanted to start by going over a few key levers and then a few consumer trends before we get into the panel today. So the levers that we'll be discussing today to harness this growth potential is, as I just said, the influx of newcomers to the outdoor recreation, I guess, market or community. Obviously, COVID-19 has created a lot of pent-up demand for people wanting to get outside with their families to enjoy the outdoors. And it really gives us an opportunity to speak to a new consumer without being intimidating, while also making sure that we're not losing the attention of our core enthusiast. So that's one of the levers we'll talk about today. And then obviously, as I said, bridging our existing enthusiasts to consider more activities. And then how can we keep both groups of consumers to be lifers and have them start considering things like fat biking, Nordic, snowshoeing, winter running, or AT in addition to what they already love. So without further ado, I know we have a tight schedule here and a lot to talk about, so I'm going to go ahead and get into these consumer trends. Okay, so first and foremost, we have a brand new U.S. Travel Association weekly travel data report that came out on June 18th. And I wanted to just share 4 quick bullets with you. So the likelihood of a consumer participating in a number of key travel activities increased considerably in June. And we will make all of this available to you, obviously, to the SIA membership. So don't worry about taking notes. So after dipping last month in May, there's a rising intent staying in hotels and resorts in the next 6 months. 38% of those polled said it's likely that they will do so compared to 31% in May, which is great. Among Americans who are expecting to travel in 2020, most say they will avoid crowded destinations, 53%, and many say they'll avoid attending conferences, 46%, or air travel, 34%. Americans are feeling more comfortable about visiting familiar destinations over new destinations. Over 60% say that it's likely that the primary destination of their next leisure trip will be one they have visited before. And pandemic etiquette is very important to today's consumer. We talked about that in a couple of past town halls. We'll be touching on it today as well. But as portrayed by the media, this is becoming more and more important. It's affecting the desirability of travel destinations. 61% of American travelers say such behavior would make a given destination less desirable, meaning if they did not have good pandemic etiquette. So in addition, quickly, there's also another travel intelligence weekly report that came out on June 15th from MMGY. It's an ongoing tracking survey to monitor the impact of COVID-19 on the travel intentions of U.S. businesses and leisure travelers. Optimism for both business and leisure travel continues to increase. 40% of those studies expected to still travel during the next 6 months, which is great. Better than expected anyway. 67% of travelers are likely to travel by personal car during the next 6 months, more than double the percentage planning to travel by air. Obviously, we're all seeing a lot of people doing that right now in the summer. They're more than likely to consider that also in the winter. And those likely to stay in a hotel or resort during the coming months increased from wave 4. The percentage likely to do so remains relatively low. So keep that in mind as well. That pandemic etiquette is huge. So consumers are slowly starting to feel more confident traveling and booking travel. They will be playing it safe, traveling closer to home by car and RV to familiar destinations and to destinations perceived as having etiquette. The future is obviously still uncertain, and we're going to be talking a lot about how to build flexibility into your business today. That's a big primary focus. Also keep in mind, travelers are purchasing travel insurance and booking flights, hotels, etc., which even underscores this trend even more. So we're going to kick off the panel today with Mr. Tyler LaMotte of Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. Tyler, the first question is directed at you, and I would like to have you kick off the panel by addressing what are you and your team at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort anticipating in terms of participants traveling to your region this winter? Are you banking on driving, distance, local, or planning on ideally having people fly to you?
Thanks for the first question. Happy to jump in. One of the key indicators that we're looking at, and there's so much uncertainty going into winter, is our season pass sales. And so we are in the midst of our spring season pass sale currently, and we made some accommodations to be able to essentially, I'd say, meet the guest where they are, given that everyone's in a different situation right now, coming out of this crisis and going through it. And so we offered, one, flexibility, which you talk about. Flexibility as it relates to a program that we initiated, which is essentially a down payment program, which allows the pass purchaser to put some money, take advantage of the best pricing, decide what they're going to do as the situation develops. And as we get into the fall, if they decide they want to cancel, say, October, we'll able to give them a full refund. So trying to do different programs that can at least ease some of the uncertainty with our guests. And that's just only one. Things that we see as it relates to just the markets. Multi-resort passes have absolutely inspired drive market visitation. And we've seen that trend happening for some time now, whether that would be coming from Colorado or coming from Utah. But what we're seeing, which is interesting with this summer and just starting to kind of read through visitation as we are now open and operating this summer, those drive markets are expanding and they're wider, and people are driving greater distances to recreate and feeling that traveling by car with their families is a safer bet, at least at this juncture, versus hopping in an airplane and flying. And we do see indication that the flight market will start to rebound in the fall as those numbers start to tick up, but really it's the drive market that's going to be huge. And I think we just anticipate that that's going to be a big driver for visitation for Jackson, knowing that we are specifically a destination and we are not connected to a major urban metro. So a lot of our marketing, a lot of our promotion, a lot of our tactics will definitely be geared towards those drive markets, as well, of course, as our local market, which are essential and very important to us as well.
Thank you so much. Thomas, I'd love to have you weigh in here regarding Kristin Sports, knowing obviously that the consumers migrated so much, the path of purchase online, as well as the cash register migrating online. I'd love to know if you could weigh in on how your team's working to acquire new customers right now as you're trying to shift from how you normally acquire foot traffic at Kristin.
Sure, yeah. Happy to weigh in here, Kristin. You know, to be honest, I think online for us has been on our radar for a while. Obviously, we do play in that, you know, part of the business, but we knew we needed to spend, you know, some time and attention on our online business. But, you know, with the pandemic and everything happening, it's just really shown us that we really had to have hyper focus and really speed up our game online. So we are definitely focused on acquiring new customers and looking at different paths to do that. And there's a lot of different avenues for how you can get that done. I can't exactly speak to all the different tools that we're using, but certainly, you know, we want to provide, you know, really a much better user experience on the front end for the consumer and on the back end for us. You know, we really want to be able to leverage our platform, our stores, and all the different, you know, products that we have for our consumers. So it's definitely an extremely important part of the business that we're focused on, and we believe that we just need to do it much better and engaging that consumer and acquiring new customers. So definitely an important part for us.
Yeah, the consumer decision journey and path to purchase, obviously with everybody really migrating to their browsers over the past 4 months or so, has really cemented that behavior into people. And it gives us a great opportunity in terms of more people searching and coming across our storefront, if you will. We all have a storefront in our own website. And Tyler, I'd love it if you could maybe drop in also and share how you're anticipating a convergence of newcomers or casual skiers or snowboarders this winter to Jackson Hole. Obviously, you mentioned in our rehearsal call your summer campaign. I'd love to hear how maybe that's given you a little bit of vision or a kind of a way to peek around the corner for fall winter.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, as I said, kind of meeting the guest where they are, or the future guest, you know, obviously we know that a lot of visitation is driven out of urban metros, and given the sentiment of what people are feeling that live in these urban areas and really wanting to escape and reconnect with nature, re-engage with the wild, so to speak. So for us, the campaign that we launched for this summer, which will also carry through into winter, is called Return to the Wild, and really wanting to play into that sentiment of creating aspiration, storytelling. A lot of the content we've been driving, you know, through the pandemic, you know, after closure going into summer, has really just been about a reprieve. So really focusing heavily on visuals and nature type of content, creating more kind of aspiration for not just only Jackson Hole, but for everybody to get outside. And so that's been a key focus for us as we want to try to re-engage and engage new customers around what it means to connect with nature, which I think is a noble pursuit in general. But when we think about our destination specifically, you know, Wyoming is the least populous state. We have 6 people per square mile in this state. And obviously Jackson Hole is a very wild place given our proximity to the parks. And of course, the type of terrain that we offer, that is a pretty unique experience here up in Jackson. So really trying to tune up those elements. And, we have a very robust, I'd say, house file that drives a lot of engagement through our guests. So clearly we can target the markets that we feel that are going to be most important, that are going to want to aspire to get out of those markets and come visit and ski and recreate and do it safely. So that's been a key focus for us as it relates to messaging, campaign, promotion, and storytelling, really trying to offer some levity during this crisis and get people out to want to come out and ski.
You hit the nail on the head with aspiration, and that's something that we all need to look at together and collaborate with, each other on together, I think. And that really is the spirit of these town halls. So looking at that aspiration of the consumer, obviously, as they're looking at destination, product in our world is so close to that. So Mike, I'd love to get your take on how your brands are planning on positioning products to existing and new customers, knowing that retail and resort operations are most likely going to be different this winter. How are you switching gears over there at Amer? Oh, I think you're muted. Happens to the best of us.
I'm here. Thank you, Kristin. And I'd be remiss in first not just acknowledging and recognizing SIA's contribution through this with these town halls. They've been really excellent. I want to congratulate you, Kristin, as well.
Okay.
And they added a lot to this whole period, so thank you. In every industry, every other industry, the approach to these new realities in retail, and in our world, retail and resort operations are sinking in, and we have to be very cognizant. The landscape is still a bit hazy. It is, what we know is that we don't know a lot. However, having said that, we do have to make certain assumptions and plans in order to be able to project down the road. What's already been mentioned is the enormous desire to be outdoors and recreate, and we first have to capitalize on that. That will be very important as we go forward. The latest tidbit I got was NPD talked about a 16% increase in outdoor equipment in the month of May in retail sales. There's going to be winter, and there's going to be winter sports participation demand. In anticipating how to position ourselves at retail and at the resort with existing customers, there's the real obvious opportunity to cross-pollinate across winter sport activities and equipment use. We expect much more crossover in the sports, and expect especially non-lift served activities such as Nordic and backcountry touring to get a big shot in the arm. So what we need to do is be able to connect in our relationship with our consumers the dots, and give them the messaging and show them what these other sports look like. And we're actually in a pretty good place to do that, just because we cover a lot of territory in the outdoor world. In positioning or product specifically, there's a big opportunity to elevate products that are really versatile and can cross into different sports. So an example, alpine boots that can be used for alpine touring. Touring bindings that can be used for alpine. These are important aspects, and that's one thing that we'll do, is elevate the presence of those products in front of the consumer. And we also think that there's going to be a new pragmatism, or an additional pragmatism, about product selections, and hence products that are positioned more around tried and true, dependable, durable, having lasting appeal and use, probably will be a little bit more important than the more trendy products that are on the wings, if you will. So that's going to be something we think has got some good territory. When we're looking at newcomers, positioning products that are packaged in sets, that are easy to use, and frankly positioned at a lower price point will be important. this certainly, what I picked up from listening to the experts in the bike business is that these lower price points will be more important even in our business in the coming months. And again, Nordic skiing should see an uptick from this because it is less expensive, it's easier to use, and it's frankly much less complicated. So that's something that we see. And then respecting retail operations and how we want to approach it. There's going to be a really substantial adjustment in the next months. I'm sure Thomas can speak to this as well, but case in point are going to be these big sales events, Labor Day, Columbus Day, which create pretty sizable attendance and close quarters, and they're going to be affected. The boot fitting experience in our world is going to be affected. Again, close quarters, hands-on. So it's, in our world, what we see as the advantage of this is that it will give emphasis to products that are fast fitting and easily customizable and adjustable, because the environment's going to be certainly less hands-on. It's going to be, where service is probably going to have to be booked in advance, but it will, these capabilities will be important. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was the rental and the season lease operations, because they are a substantial part of the business. Again, we're going to really need to have a more efficient approach in this less hands-on environment, whether it's in the equipment fitting and or the delivery or in the transaction that goes with it. Great opportunity to accelerate online bookings, curbside and hotel delivery, electronic signatures and releases, and scheduled appointments. And I think all this is going to come in play, and frankly, it should be a real good learning period, and frankly, it will probably change the way we do business in the future.
That's definitely something I think we can all relate with. One thing I wanted to just keep you on the hook here for a minute here, Mike. Obviously, we all know that adage, if they can see it, they can be it. And we have the opportunity, thankfully, with digital to be able to switch and tailor our messaging as we're going. And I was just going to ask you what messaging you and your team are planning on using to kind of go hand in hand with what you were just discussing, which is largely around reducing friction and making it a good experience to engage with these new winter sports and activities. So I'm just curious if you have anything you'd like to add in there in terms of messaging that you're trying to convey to the newcomer.
Yeah, I think that for the newcomer, and it's really kind of bleeds into your next inquiry. It's about how we create these comfort levels and these levels of engagement, where especially on the newcomer side, they're going to need education. They're going to need to be led. They're going to need to know the not just the where, but the how to, and it's going to be really important.
Yeah, for sure. I do think it would be a great opportunity now to dive into some more retail practices. We've hit this on a lot of our town halls, but we have a new, fresh group of perspective in our panelists here today. So I wanted to go ahead and just, I guess, Tyler, it would be great if we could task you with sharing what you're seeing happen at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort in the summer, because you said there are definitely some things that you're seeing that you're planning on carrying over in the winter, which is a great little petri dish, if you will, for all of us to learn from.
Yeah, thanks. Well, clearly, the health and safety protocols that we've put in place, and there's been a ton of effort around that, have been extensive. And, we're looking at, just like everyone is thinking about, boot fitting and retail. Clearly at JHMR, we also have extensive retail, right? So we work obviously with many of the brands represented on this call. And, as we start to outfit our guests this summer, specifically with mountain bike rental, for instance, how we do and encourage cashless payments, online transaction, reservation systems for equipment, where literally they can come, like at Hoback Sports, let's just say in town in Jackson, they can book online for their bike. They go to the outside of the store and their bike is waiting for them. and they're off and running. And when they come back, they drop it off. The guys take it in, they sanitize the bike, and it's ready for the next cycle. So we're definitely looking at every opportunity to minimize the direct transaction and encourage cashless payments throughout the resort and our entire operation. Clearly, we know that's not 100% possible across all of our operations, but it is something that we want to make sure the guest knows is there for them. And I think rental specifically is another one we look at. You know, we've seen rental delivery services obviously thriving in a growing segment of our overall business. Clearly, we also offer that as an option, and we'll do so going into next winter, but also looking at, you know, how can we provide direct to lift opportunities? So really trying to minimize the amount of transaction that needs to happen in our guest services or ticket offices. Also ease of reload online for those that come for a day, they go back, they can reload, and there's an incentive to reload. Again, trying to look at all of those ways that we can allow the guests to recreate safety. And I think there's a lot of new things that we're going to be able to find out and discover. You know, we look at other parts of our industry, like those other operations that operate a tram, for instance. What are they doing this summer to ensure that those tram operations are happening safely? With our gondolas, you know, we're fumigating our gondolas daily at the end of the day to ensure that those are clean. We're not letting mixed families load, or excuse me, mixed groups other than families load gondolas. So we are learning as we go, and we'll continue to learn as we start to think about winter, knowing it's just such a bigger operation, you know, throughout the resort and the resort landscape. So we're learning from the rest of our peers and community too on what it is that they're doing. But we all know, moreover, that, you know, the guest has to have some skin in the game. The brands can only do so much. There has to be a level of responsibility. So we look at what are we doing for our guests to keep them safe? What are we doing to keep our employees safe? And what can our guests and employees do to keep everybody safe? So those are things that, you know, recognize we're all in it together. If we love recreating, let's keep recreating, but let's all do it safely and take some responsibility in what at least we know now will likely be a new normal for a while.
It's such a double-edged sword because we have that pent-up demand and we have people aspiring for this outdoor identity and to continue that, you know, identity that they're building right now. But then we also have that consumer behavior that we all know, where they have less patience for friction and they're less loyal, as we've learned in past town halls. So it's definitely a knife-edge walk. Thomas, can you speak to us from the retail perspective in terms of what you're planning on doing for winter with your physical retail operations around rentals and service for this new consumer that will be emerging?
Yeah, you know, and I love the word friction, because like you said, that's, you know, that's the part that we all need to be focusing on reducing as much as we can. And I really think, you know, the environment we're in, there's a lot more friction just based on how we have to interact with our guests now. And so some of the things we've done is we've put together, you know, different levels of protocol. So we have like, you know, roughly 3 protocols depending on what level of safety we need to be working with. You know, it can be regionally or store by store, but there's definitely different, you know, different things that happen with each protocol, that each level, depending on where we're sitting. You know, an example of that would be maybe the store, you know, where we started, our stores were closed, right? So people were coming back to us on an appointment only basis. So you couldn't just walk into our store. And then, you know, as we felt more confident and things seemed to be settling out, we started letting in only, you know, fewer people in the store. You know, I'm sure a lot of people kind of understand that. Or, you know, things we're going to be doing, you know, when are face masks required in the store or not? You know, boot fitting and other services like Mike touched on, right? Those are going to be much more oriented towards appointments versus just walk in and get your boots fit. You know, taking other services like tuning and stuff, you know, probably you'll be looking at servicing that outside the store as much as we can, so that we're limiting that interaction inside. But first and foremost, I think, you know, we want to make sure that we're providing a safe environment for for our stores, for our employees, as much as for our guests. And we want to make sure that our guests feel that, you know, they need to know what we're doing to keep them safe, and that we get their confidence that this is a safe place to be and shop in. And, you know, that we are sanitizing, you know, our products, and this is how we're doing it. And just really giving them that communication, you know. From an online standpoint, yeah, I mean, you know, obviously we got to give them the experience that we expect them to have in our stores, and be able to transcend that to the online part of the business, and push for online, and, you know, be able to leverage some omni business, so that, you know, we can kind of let the consumer decide where they and how they want to shop, and be able to provide that to them. So those are some of the different things that we're looking at for our business.
And obviously, we're very much talking about tactics here. And Constance, I don't want you to feel like we're forgetting about you. You bring an incredible resource. And I do think it would be great if you could just quickly, before we head into our next topic, which is really more product focused at retail, I think it would be really useful for the audience to hear your take on, I mean, you're a national nonprofit responsible for bringing 45,000 kids on snow last year alone. Is that right? You're muted, by the way.
So yes, last year Share Winter funded through 28 program partners 45,940 youth in snowboard, alpine, and Nordic skiing. And what's interesting is everything that you're saying does have some resonance, and then also we're hearing from different facets of the organizations that we fund and the youth that we work with that, you know, span 23 states, are in urban and rural areas, but are all very much relying on the group experience to be introduced to the sport. Last year, our youth, you know, 48% of them across the board were never evers, as in never touched any of these sports, no experience with any of the three. So in increasing participation, that's an amazing stat, but in trying to figure out how to get groups of never evers in the hundreds to various mountains in various regions is definitely something that we're paying a lot of close attention to. And also, you know, a lot of these introductory programs, these community partnerships really do rely sometimes on the surplus that is available either in mountain tickets, retail surplus, rental surplus, and in a reduced capacity scenario, you know, all of these factors will play heavily into how many kids we can get on the mountain and how that plays. And then with regard to safety, industry data shows us that a never ever is usually very concerned with safety. And we have a whole new pandemic issue where parents have to entrust their youth in programs that not only do they worry about them getting on scary equipment, but they're just worried about them being in a crowd or taking a bus. So we've been working with all of our program partners to think through opportunities and what will happen if our groups aren't welcome at the mountain, not welcome, but can't be accommodated, or if lessons can't happen. What does that mean for the overall pipeline of participation? It's gonna require flexibility and innovation, and luckily we work with the best in the business, so they're on it. And you know, we'll see how that all plays out in each of these scenarios.
It's fascinating to me because as we were doing our rehearsals, you had mentioned that, I mean, obviously you said, was it 28 different states that you're in?
23, yeah.
23 states, and imagine, you know, just as we're looking at COVID and not only the recession and everything that's happening in the country today, it's almost like you're dealing with like that many different protocols, as well as all of the resorts that you're trying to tap people into. So in terms of flexibility, I think that you definitely win the Endurance Athlete Award. Is there anything that you can give us a little bit of a purview on that you have learned? I realize there is no magic 8-ball for what you're about to go into here, but are there anything that you can share that you and the best of the best have brought to the forefront here in terms of groups?
A lot of what we're looking at is how we can reduce group capacity. Our pipeline, so 48% is never evers, but a lot of our programs keep kids through initial competencies. So being able to ski or ride or Nordic ski in a way that you feel safe on your own. So we're looking at how we can ensure that those kids that have hit that level where they don't need a group lesson, that we could get them to the mountain, keep them in the pipeline, and serve as aspirational stewards and ambassadors for their communities. So we're focusing on how to optimize whatever options we have. In our school programs, I mean, that's another big one. We're working with 178 schools across the US in various states of confusion, as we'll say. And, you know, we have Nordic skis in all of those schools. What will that mean if the kids don't go to the schools? Could we possibly check them out to families? Is there a possibility that they could be available for individual use on recess? We're looking at every possible way to look at it. What I will say is that because of the nature of the groups that we work with, they form really strong bonds with their community. So keeping in touch with the kids, even if maybe they're just going to go on winter hikes, snowshoe, or engage in online challenges for who got outside and got the most steps in, they have that special sauce, which is community. So even if the kids don't get out as much this year, we do feel that we have such a strong pipeline that 2021 will just be huge.
I love that optimism. Thank you. And I think there's a lot that we'll be able to learn from you as we're going through this in terms of what you're doing from a hyper-local standpoint, which we will touch on a little bit later in our panel here. But I wanted to go back to one of I know the membership is super interested in hearing kind of about the retail landscape from a product standpoint. And then we'll go back into, you know, working with partners, both on the regional level and then cross-promotional wise to talk about how we can create visibility around it, the opportunity for winter recreation. But Mike, I would love to tap into your knowledge and everything that you're steering over there at AMER in terms of how things are looking from just a retail product pipeline perspective. You've really dove into this in a great way in our rehearsals, and I would love for you to kind of update us on what you're seeing with that product delivery standpoint. Uh-oh.
I'll get this right. Anyway, yeah, you know, on the question of product sufficiency and pipeline, it's a great question, and frankly, it's one that we are surrounding daily. It's so front of mind. So probably I need to start with some backstory on really what's happened in the last 3 to 4 months to put it all in perspective. So to be clear, the supply chain for really the entire hard goods industry in winter sports was disrupted totally by the COVID outbreak, anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks, and in some cases even longer. For my company side, this was true in both our owned production in Europe as well as our sourced production in Asia. In addition, as the retail and resort business stopped so abruptly in mid-March, you know, fully 3 to 4 weeks of prime retail and rental revenue was just evaporated. The consequence is there's more inventory than expected. The open to buys in the preseason declined, as have the budgets for capital expenditures or CapEx on the resort rental side. So with this softening of demand, the supply chain interruptions, for sure there's adjustments in capacity and production, as well as dealing with the uncertainty as of how exactly retail and resort operations will go in the fall. So while I can't really speak for other producers, speaking for our company, we've been producing product since January. And we stockpiled, you know, obviously certain quantities of the new products. At the same time, we were relatively fortunate in that we were operational in our major facilities in early May. In Europe, particularly Austria, did benefit from getting open a little bit earlier. They also shut down earlier, so they were able to come back. Frankly, we will have product and we don't anticipate major issues other than, you know, the normal bumps that you run into when, like our company developed, we're shipping 5 million units of winter sports equipment. However, the focus has really been on the sensitivity to the comfort of our wholesale distribution. Around inventory stocking levels, as well as mitigating risks for them, and in the process, mitigating risks for ourselves. So there are a couple things that are really important in this. One key element was to work with our retailers and identify many more products in our current collections, 2021, that will carry over to 21, 22. And that has the benefit, obviously, of when you produce 2-year life cycles, it mitigates a lot of the risk. In addition, we're working with our customers on things like split shipments and other requests to just adjust the flow of product, because we don't know exactly the timing and the normal consumption of this product has been interrupted, and we don't know exactly the pace it's going to come back. So it's important that we adjust this flow, in the operation to the comfort level of everyone. All in all, we think the supply will be sufficient for the industry. However, it's going to require close monitoring. It's going to require flexibility, and doing things that really pay attention to the needs of the market. You're on mute.
Oh, all right. Everybody has to do it at least once today.
That's right. There you go.
What I was saying to myself, apparently, is I wanted to just say that when we were rehearsing, you said something that was so profound. The answer today is yes, right?
Yeah.
Will you be collaborative with retailers in a new way? Yes. And that is truly what, the essence of flexibility is. And Thomas, I would love to bring you into this. Obviously, you're on the front lines there with Kristin Sports. I would love to have you share, how are you planning on, basically merchandising and presenting inventory to your consumer in the coming winter, maybe even considering like different, ways to do that through different product collections that you normally wouldn't feature, et cetera. But talk a little bit about the challenges you're facing first and then what you plan to do.
Sure. Obviously, inventory is a concern, or we kind of know, everybody knows that you're going to have more inventory or old inventory left over from prior season. And so we're thinking about how we want to mitigate that and deal with that situation. Our traditional event sales and, what do those look like? And we certainly don't have all the answers yet, but we're diligently working on, what that's going to look and feel like. But, I expect inventory to bleed into areas in the stores that we typically don't have carryover, to move through it. And yeah, we looked at our new purchases, and I thank all our vendors for working with us on what we had to do, because it wasn't easy for us. It wasn't easy for them. But we had to make some cuts while still feeling like we have the inventory we need to give our guests a selection that they want and really be able to, provide everything that they need. And like Mike said, one of the important things was, what can I buy with confidence here that I know will have some longer run life, some inventory that I can buy now that I'll be able to keep for a couple of years. I can buy that with more confidence than other products. Certainly in this situation and scenario, the 2 years of a product life cycle definitely helps. And as far as like expanding into other, product segments, I think that's definitely very viable for many companies. And I would honestly say that probably a little easier with more nimble mom and pop stores that can handle, bringing in, fat bikes and, winter running, but we really feel that, our core is pretty focused on alpine, on snowboard, on winter sports. And while some of these kind of are, for me, they're a little more fringe, winter sports. And so to kind of roll them out across our platform, definitely a little more difficult, but at the same time, we want to provide our guests something and an opportunity to purchase something that they know should something happen at the resort, should the resort close down, that we give them product or an opportunity to buy product that they can use, like Mike said, you know, a boot that they can use to climb up with a binding that works, but also works on the resort. So, you know, really leveraging kind of that presentation more than actually expanding our whole entire product offering. So that's kind of how we're looking at, you know, our kind of position from a product standpoint.
Thank you. I know it's probably been super challenging, and I am asking you to look into the crystal ball here, but you bring.
Yeah, well, it's like living, you know, 3 years in about 4 months is kind of what it feels like. So
It does. I feel like we've aged 8 years in the last 4 months. I totally agree. Tyler, before we move on to our next question, I'd love to have you have a chance to weigh in on Jackson Hole Mountain Resort and the retail operations that you have up there, if you have anything you'd like to add to this part of our conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, clearly the teams are trying to navigate a new normal in terms of how they're working with all of the suppliers and all of their sales reps in terms of open to buy and trying to plan for winter as they're looking at assortment. Obviously, you know, inventory, I think, is for most is an issue, and clearly closing a month early right in the midst of a spring break that didn't happen, and you know, end of season sale that was just getting going. I mean, great opportunity for people to take advantage of some great product that's still there in terms of full assortment. So I think that that's what they've been focusing in, moving winter goods. Summer goods are still clearly driven a lot by the biking industry and our biking business, which has been very, very, very strong. And, you know, looking at really focusing in on, you know, within our mountain, we still need to be able to supply our guests with the equipment that they need to have a great time here. You know, it's obviously a very big mountain experience that requires, I'd say, a certain positioning of the type of equipment that people are looking for. You know, it's a very cold mountain. Clearly, we need to be able to provide, you know, enough to keep people warm and plan those assortments accordingly with those vendors. So I know we're navigating some uncharted waters, but there's definitely things that we need to ensure that we deliver to make sure that our guests have a good time here in summer and in winter. So, you know, I think that, you know, retail is very strong for us. Obviously at the base, we do a lot of conversion, and we want to maintain that and still deliver a high level of service and assortment. So we're still striving to do that again as we go in through summer and winter.
And we're going to keep reporting on this, everybody, just because there really is no way to kind of put your finger on it right now. But the more information we get from a broader, you know, group of voices, the more we can hopefully plan and execute. I have to go back to Mike. You're really a provider of fantastic sound bites from our rehearsals, so I have to quote you here, even though you're on my panel. But you said something awesome that I wanted to share as we were rehearsing. You said, you know, obviously you see the importance of engaging the newcomer, but you know it's going to be a full-time job just keeping enthusiasts engaged and educated this winter. But I love how, you know, you basically said we have to kind of keep our core group happy before we kind of throw ourselves out to newcomers. At the same time, we all know we have that opportunity in the newcomer realm. So cross collaboration, I think, makes a lot of sense, which is truly the spirit of the SIA town halls, is bringing everybody together. So I thought we could spend a few minutes talking with everybody about that. And Mike, obviously you do that through your brands. You mentioned getting snow sliders to be aware of the fact that there are a number of ways to enjoy snow. Can you talk a little bit about how you're planning to create those bridges between your brands? Because you have such an interesting way of cross collaboration underneath your umbrella of brands, if you will, at Amer.
Sure. And, you know, just to start, you know, a little bit of we're trying to combine, you know, a lot of consumers here, and we're talking about, on one hand, core enthusiasts and newcomers in almost the same breath. And it's tricky because you can't lump them necessarily in the same bucket, and it's a little disingenuous if you're trying to message them in a similar way or communicate in a similar way to both groups. So we kind of detach them. And I think what you're talking about in the first sense is that with the enthusiast or the core consumer, we've got to keep them engaged, and it's really, for lack of a better phrase, keeping the stoke on. And you know, to keep them involved and connected, and we're hyping their sport that's important to them as a core consumer in a very authentic and interesting way. We use across our brand, Solomon, a platform called Solomon TV, which gives us access to a really substantial number of consumers that have opted into that show, and it promotes our athletes, our sports, our products, and most importantly, it's about the community. And it's got a real authentic and insider's view. So what I'm getting at in a long way is we can use that platform as an example to connect the dots with these different activities. And so we can show and expose the trail runner to winter running, the trail runner to Nordic skiing, the alpine skier obviously to touring and backcountry touring. Those are the bridges we can build. So we'll use things like that as well. And what we're seeing in the retail and the community is that they're starting to see that opportunity, and they're going for it themselves. And we've seen a bunch of core alpine shops now planning to carry Nordic for the first time. You know, one of my Nordic associates internally reminded me that the Nordic business in the U.S. used to be over 500,000 pairs of Nordic skis. Now it's less than 200. So maybe there's big potential there. And then obviously with, you know, if the capacities at lifts are going to change, there's this big opportunity to see where uphill traffic goes and what kind of interest the resort operators have to have that capacity expanded. So that's great. On the flip side, with the newcomer, you know, I think it's as much about doing what we do already really quite well. And that's we romance our sports and we really give life to the playgrounds that are so appealing to people. The key is that we have to make it an easy proposition for the consumer. We have to, you know, provide, as I said earlier, not only the what and the where, but the how. And it's going to be super important. And it's going to be important, a message that there's going to needs to be some planning ahead, because I'm not sure you're going to show up at a ski area and necessarily get on the lift, you know, and so it's going to be a different world that we require it. But we're looking at all these things to try to say, how do we engage both the core and the newcomer to the more activities? So that's it.
Your word community, I think, really ties everything together, because ultimately, no matter if you're a core consumer or you're a newcomer, you're going to want to join something, especially during crisis. One thing we're learning as we're studying behavior every week for the SIA newsletter is looking at the fact that consumers are looking for story on all levels, whether they're enthusiasts or newcomers, and they're looking to belong. So the more that we could make that visible to them and the opening there, whether it's a core enthusiast wanting to maybe try something different or a newcomer wanting to come into these sports for the first time. And I also just want to say, as somebody who was a journalist prior to working at, you know, in what I do now for 20 years, I remember covering snow sports for the first time, and I would hear from the snowshoe brands, if you can walk, you can snowshoe. And I remember seeing and experiencing the Nordic brands and really having an aspiration to do that as an athlete, but seeing kind of a depiction of like how difficult the sport was. And now we have an opportunity to portray Nordic in a way that is simple, like walking, like snowshoeing, just moving around on snow, as you said. So I think that there's also just some there's important things to consider in your visual representation as well for all of these sports and avenues, but the community is really a huge focus. And Thomas, I wanted to call on you now to talk about cross collaboration, because ultimately at retail, the heart of retail is collaborating with the brands that you're offering and offering a regional backdrop for that. And I'm wondering if you're experiencing, you know, some collaborative efforts that are new or that your team's kicking off with some of the brands that you're distributing to your local communities through Christie Sports this year, because ultimately with that collaboration, we have more reach.
Yeah, you know, for an operation that has fairly large, you know, footprint, we do empower our kind of local stores to collaborate and work with our local communities as much as we can, and we definitely want to support them as much as possible. And you know, that really kind of, you know, that's really up to that key area to really figure out how can they best support that community. Now, you know, we haven't, you know, to be honest, we haven't really finalized what that looks like. We've been pretty busy at the task at hand. So I don't have a lot to share there, but I can say that we definitely want to support our local communities as much as we can, because they are important to us, and we do see a lot of value, you know, there. So we'll continue to do that, but I'm not exactly sure what that painted picture looks like yet.
Fair enough. And I totally, you know, appreciate what you're saying. I think there is a huge opportunity for the brands listening to partner with their retailers and wholesalers in a different way, because ultimately the consumer, no matter what level they're at, will engage more with something that they can identify with. And that backdrop of a local, you know, experience is huge for them. And of course, Tyler, I have to tap into Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, because you work with so many regional marketing partners and you put on this great summer promotion that's now going into winter. How are you working together to, I think, you know, raise the level of visibility for all, you know, different types of enthusiasts or newcomers up in Jackson Hole?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, speaking of community, I mean, Jackson is, if you've been up to Jackson, it is a very tight-knit community. We talk about core, we talk about local, a very passionate, very vocal local that has clearly a lot of appreciation and passion for JHMR and this mountain and this place. You know, for us, as it relates to, you know, the activities that we cross-promote with our external partners and partner brands, you know, with all of the content that we drive through all of our social media channels, which are industry leading in terms of just our reach and our aspiration, you know, whether it be the activities that we promote in summer, like, you know, trail running, mountain biking, via ferrata, hiking, and then other things that we support and drive for destination, of course, through the parks and other things that are in our proximity. And then clearly in winter, you know, looking at how we're trying to elevate our position around backcountry guided experiences, knowing that we have so much acreage outside our gates into Rock Springs and so much aspiration for people wanting to push their abilities. So that's going to be an area of big focus for us, is continuing to expand our guided offering. But of course, still creating just tons of aspiration with our brand partnerships around skiing and riding. And, you know, we talk a little bit about events, for instance. There's a lot of question about what's going to happen with events going into this coming winter, given what we see in front of us. And when we think about aspiration and we think about media, everyone's spending so much time in front of their screens. If you're familiar with the Kings and Queens of Corbett's event, or maybe seen a little bit of inklings around Travis Rice's Natural Selection event, which will happen next winter. Both of those will be put on by Red Bull, and there'll be more broadcast events versus spectator events. And a lot of the things that we're considering are, how do we utilize our digital platforms and communication through digital broadcasts that still drive aspiration and engagement, support the community, support the businesses in the area and the town of Jackson, but also do it safely where there's not a lot of density of, you know, basically on the ground spectators. So, you know, with our partners, within our marketing efforts and activation, it's just so integrated here. In terms of newcomers, the newcomer side really is, Mike said, around the essence of core, is, you know, again, we have such a core, and I think everything radiates from that core. It creates additional aspiration to bring new people in. So, you know, I think that there's a lot there, but we just are doing it differently, and we just need to manage those expectations differently. But the core community will be at the center of our success, and that really is our locals.
And I also love what you said in the rehearsal that we did, Tyler, around having the consumer sharing the responsibility of this activity. So as we're discussing, or, you know, what's going to happen with their activities in winter. So as we're discussing all of this, I do think it's important that we all think through how we can not only work with each other, but also work to communicate with the consumer to sort of set expectations. As Mike was saying, we don't even know for sure if they get all the way to a resort, if they're going to be able to like get on that tram or get on that lift. So it is important that we're managing consumer expectations as well. And I did want to say before we break for questions here, I have a couple more things to go through. And Constance, you're going to be kind of teed up in this hyper local. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the fall stoke building that we're so used to in our communities and how that's all going to unfold. Obviously, nobody knows for sure, but and thankfully these experiences are content based, you know, largely sometimes around like what we're looking at with movie premieres and potentially avalanche fundraisers and different things that really mark kind of the start of our season. I would love to be able to tap into our panel today to find out how they might see these types of fall stoke builders unfolding, or if your brands possibly have anything on tap for that. So if anybody could weigh in on that, that would be great before we get into hyperlocal and then the questions. And I can speak to it if nobody has anything to say, because again, this is a crystal ball. I think I'll go ahead and help out. Like, I just think obviously we're gonna have to continue to build pathways with virtual experiences. And when we do a great job with those are something that we could carry over into non-COVID years. So we're establishing new traditions with the consumers right now. And we all have an opportunity to be super creative and to try new ways of doing things and test and learn on that front. But I do think it's so important to continue to offer those stoke builders and sort of those great markers that we are entering into the winter sports season. And I just, again, want to say, Constance, like you kind of have, I think, an MBA, if you will, in terms of flexibility in what you're doing, getting kids out on the slopes this winter. But I would love for you to kind of talk a little bit about kind of what you're seeing now in terms of making sure that you talked a little bit at the end of the last, you know, time I tapped you into the panel about really enabling kids to potentially do what they want to do in their home stomping grounds. Can you speak a little bit about how you plan to do that before we hop into the questions and answers here? And ultimately what I'm looking for is like almost a last resort, right? Like, okay, we know we can't do this, we can't do this. Is there a baseline that you are planning on providing, because you can't really bank on the travel or anything else right now?
Well, it's interesting, and I think this is a crucial element when we speak about marketing, when we speak about our industry, what we define as core or community. You know, most of our kids aren't from ski families. So it's not that their mom and dad is gonna rustle up a rental set and take them to the mountain by themselves. We're talking about introducing large numbers of youth who just do not come from a ski background and who are traditionally unrepresented in the ski industry. So for them, you know, it won't be as simple as telling them to do something different or pick up a pair of Nordic skis. That's still outside of the wheelhouse of where a lot of our kids are. What we're relying on is maintaining connection and building towards pathways in the future, and how we can give kids education, give families education, take this time to welcome new families and communities, either through digital concept, through campaigns, so that more people feel welcome to our overall ski and snow industry. And for us, our minimum is that, you know, we've secured our funding, and actually we've increased our funding. So we have the means, if the programs are a go, to put more kids on snow this year than we did last year, if all things are perfect. If not, what we can do is invest in starting new programs, starting new connections, and having a whole year of building and building stoke for 2021, 2022. We don't want to make a major shift because, you know, we are philanthropic, so we don't want to invest a whole bunch of money into a single season, because we're in it for the long game. We're hoping to create people that are in it for the long game, new consumers. So our biggest promise is spending the next year seeding new programs, supporting our programs that can run, and then giving them the resources to build out larger capacities in the future. So if we have this downtime, if that's what we want to call it, we can give kids the inspiration to do it and then guide them slowly towards a bigger season next year. Oh, I think you're still muted.
I am. Sorry, I have a lot of screens open here. I apologize. So I popped open the question and answer screen, so forgive me. I have 2 strikes, one more, and I'll just go ahead and delete myself off this. So I have some questions that I'd love to go into, and thank you, Constance. That was super helpful. So I have a couple of things I'm just going to go ahead and direct. They were all, you know, kind of pre-directed, which is super handy. Thomas, I think the first question is for for you here. Are you buying the same volume of merchandise for this coming winter as you have before, or how off are you? And I realize that's a potentially a little bit of a, can't open the kimono that much, but is there anything that you can share around that?
Well, I can say that we're not buying the same amount, I think from a strategy standpoint, and everybody is a little bit different, I think it depends on what region you're in, at what part of the ski cycle were you in when it shut down. We have a pretty heavy resort business, and, like in Jackson Hole, Colorado and Utah and, other areas, New Mexico shut down spring break really kind of midway through. And there's a lot of business for us there. So, everybody's inventory position definitely ended up in a different situation, but no, we're not, I didn't just kind of go into, next season expecting to be, at the same level, and of inventory. So, I couldn't, I wish I could share how much we cut with everybody, but, I really don't feel like I can do that. But definitely saw some fairly decent cuts to our orders for sure. While, again, still wanting to provide the right type of assortment and the sufficiency that we feel like we need to give our guests, an opportunity to buy what they want.
Thank you. And then I have one here for you, Mike, from Roger Lohr. Has Amer already begun seeing requests to increase gear purchases by retail outlets to prepare for an XC uptick?
Yes, we have. In fact, our Nordic business has remained, as far as a year-over-year comparison, has remained on the positive side. And it's largely because we think that it's a local activity and that is, again, it's easy, it's accessible, and people see that they're going to be able to have some bandwidth in it. And it's coming not just from existing customers, but we're seeing it from new customers as well.
Thanks. And I have, make sure I didn't mute myself. Okay, good. Mike, I have another one for you that's in the same genre. So I'll go ahead and ask this one as well. Are you seeing an increase with all Alpine AT gear? We are struggling with the balance between versatility of the product, a positive, and the cost of said product keeping people from buying. Do you think people will be willing to spend the extra dollars for this product?
I do. And the reason I do is that, and it's the double-edged sword. One of the advantages of our consumer is that they have more disposable income. And they have shown that in the marketplace that they will spend to give themselves access to the opportunity and to the activity. So, I'd like to say that we've suddenly reformed ourselves and have $300 backcountry touring packages. But, today we think that there's a good opportunity. We do have some products that are lower priced than our premium. So we think there's a good opportunity.
Awesome. And I will also say that we have a forthcoming Channel Mastery podcast with Matt Heitman from Pro's Closet. And he said that their average sale price is much higher than they were anticipating this year as they've moved through COVID. So keep that in mind that in bike, they are seeing, even though we're reading a lot about that sub $1,000 bike and the sellout of that, particular models or whatever, we're seeing that higher price points are also selling as well. So hopefully that will translate. So I have a question from Andrew Waller that I think would be great for Thomas to answer. Will selling online and pick up in store or home delivery become more of a focus this winter?
Yeah, I think so. I think the consumer is going to tell us where they want to go, and we definitely have to follow that. But I definitely see that as an opportunity, and I think even in other areas, event sales, we definitely think there's an opportunity to sell online, pick up in store, or shop in store, send it to your house if you don't want to buy, that jacket that's on the floor for whatever reason. You don't feel like it's you know, you want the one that's still in the wrapper, then we need to give them that opportunity.
Exactly. And then I have a question for Tyler from, I actually almost want to have you guess who this is from, but I'll just tell you, it's Mike Hatrip. He wants to know what you're planning on doing with the tram next winter.
Nice. Hey, Mike, thanks for the question. We do intend to run the tram. That it clearly is our goal. I think we're taking cues and learnings from other operations around the world in terms of how they're running their trams. You know, I think, will it be business as usual with the tram? Probably not, but the goal will be that it will run. And we're doing some capital maintenance on it this summer to get it nice and tuned up and ready to do so. So we look forward to that. And I think more communication and more protocols on how it will run to come, but it is our intention to absolutely run Big Red next week.
That's great. And Tyler, here's another one for you. Do you think resorts will loosen uphill policies in the current landscape?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And, you know, for us, it depends on everyone's operating permit, you know, whether they're in Forest Service land or public lands. We have a unique operating permit here at Jackson. We do not permit uphill travel, and that's really due to safety and the unique nature of our mountain in general. But I do think that for those that may not or be hesitant to either ride a lift or gather or access a different part of the mountain or a different lift, I think maybe, you know, I think there could be some interest in shift there to allow uphill travel. I think it depends on every resort's unique situation and space and pathways and how they allow that to happen, or times of day, et cetera. So I would anticipate that would be something that I'm sure most operators are thinking about. I think we're in a unique situation here at Jackson, but I do think just macro across the industry, we could see more uphill travel.
Does anyone else want to chime in on that one? Because I think that's a really great question. I don't know if Mike has anything to say on that. I know it's more resort based, but just thought I'd ask.
No, I think we have a lot of interest because first of all, we see a lot of cues coming from Europe on this whole area, and specifically around touring, backcountry touring. It is in a much different place in Europe than it is in North America. Many people are converging on it. One of the interesting facets was there was so much conversation about in the photos that we all saw in March and April of people backcountry skiing in the U.S., or at least the cars at the points of access. In Europe, in Austria in particular, during this whole thing, if you were ticketed by the authorities, if you were in the backcountry, and it was substantial, it was about a €1,000 fine. And the whole point was, you know, very different, but they have a community there that's really large. And to the question around price points, they have found lower price points, and that has migrated. It probably will at some point here as well. But, you know, the point being that, yes, it is top of mind. Many more people are accessing the backcountry and non-lift cert skiing.
Thanks. And then another question we have here is, do we expect a shift in tide to small, medium, and more local resorts, meaning less long travel to Vail/Altera or other resorts? So I don't know if anybody would like to capture that. We did touch on that a little bit in the beginning, but I don't think we necessarily talked about, you know, forecasting against a trend like that. Does anyone want to comment on that?
I'll comment on it just a little bit. I mean, I think, you know, obviously multi-resort passes have changed the game in terms of accessibility, you know, and also how people are planning their vacations, or also chasing powder, right? So the powder chaser, snow chaser thing is real. So I do think there's that aspect where people will hop in their cars and they will go to who has the best conditions if they feel safe to do so. But they may also check before they go in that destination, you know, what are that mountain's safety protocols? How are they conducting themselves? Making sure that there's that essence of kind of responsible tourism that will play into it. I think it will depend on everyone's situation, right? I mean, with the multi-resort passes, people can definitely drive as far as they want to, but I do think it's going to be very much led by a drive market and how far people are willing to go.
So local may play into that, but also there still will be some destination interest. If people especially aren't flying, they'll take their cars.
Yep. Thank you. That's a great answer. Does anyone else want to add, or should we go on to the next and last question for now, at least? I don't see any more that have come in. Okay. Again, Tyler's point earlier about meeting the guest where they are, this isn't something that we can put on set and forget this year at all. We have to continually be watching and looking at how they're consuming our content, how they're looking at research, etc. And that, I think, will give us a better understanding anyway of where they are and how we can meet them there with flexibility. It looks like we have another question in, and then I'll go to a final, I guess, comment more than question. What is the forecast for boot fitting? What is the new protocol for such up and close personal service? Anybody want to tackle that one?
For Christie's, I mean, I think, you know, the biggest thing is going to be, you know, it's going to depend on the environment that we're in from a safety standpoint. But again, you know, appointments and just, you know, safe distancing, you know, we're definitely going to have to be thinking around, you know, our boot benches and how many people are we going to allow on a boot bench? I mean, shoulder to shoulder is not really going to be okay anymore, right? So it's going to take on a bit of a different approach, you know, and you know, people are going to have to adjust, and I think people will understand. Some people will also be upset about that too, but that's just the nature of the business. I think people are going to need to understand that we're trying to keep the environment safe as well as the guests safe. But for us, it's going to be a lot of trying to get them an appointment, or, you know, whether it's a pre-booked appointment or they can come in and sign up for a time slot so that we can keep that area as safe as possible.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. We've thought a lot about it, and we believe that it will change. But, you know, we've seen a lot of different iterations of it, and I'm sure Thomas and the team at Christie's has played with a lot of different iterations. We've seen, you know, plexiglass stands between the boot fitter and the consumer. We've seen it spread out and on the boot fitting bench. We've seen a lot of things, but I do think there is one pervasive thing that will actually benefit, is that, first of all, the consumer will have to take a more active role in just going through this process. They'll have to be more involved in it and less passive, if you will. And I think the other thing quickly is that first fit products and products that are easily customizable and adjustable, they're going to be really key here, because they'll cut down on time and make it more efficient.
So I have one last, it's kind of a question, but I think it's more of a comment, something for us to ponder, and maybe even a future topic for an SIA town hall. But we had Allie write in and say, basically, she is curious about the access points with public land and consumers potentially feeling constrained by that. And Mike, you had mentioned something about the lines, for example, or the cars in the parking lots for backcountry skiing and how different regions handled that. Allie's point is it is uncertain, and that uncertainty is playing a role in constraining to intent to purchase, from holiday plans to gear. And she's curious to know what the winter sports industry and brands in general are doing to work with government agencies for public lands to support and encourage safe recreation during this coming winter. And if that's not something people can raise their hands and speak to, I think it's important for us to consider. So if anybody would like to talk about that, great. If not, I think it would be a fantastic future panel. So maybe we just chalk that one up. And I have answered, this is a new record, everybody. We actually have answered all of the questions that have come in. So our panelists really have done a great job today. Thank you, everybody. And I wanted to just wrap up today by bringing it back to our favorite word, and it's not nimble or pivoting, but it has to do with that. It's flexibility. And we obviously are going to have to be building so much of that into our businesses as we're servicing and guiding our consumer to an experience. And I just wanted you all to remember to think about how you, because you're all consumers, are being trained right now to expect things in experiences, whether it's from a resort, from a retail destination, travel, or a brand. And always go back to who you're trying to serve, knowing that they're being trained in a similar way. They truly are being trained by some magnificently strong and talented entities like Amazon and big retail and marketplaces. And so we just really have to keep an eye again on that removal of friction, offering a great experience, and just really being ready to be flexible and meet them where they are. So I'd love to just say thank you, a big thank you to all our panelists today and to the membership for showing up to another SIA Thursday Town Hall. We love putting this together for you. We're open to future ideas. And I just would really like to thank all of our panelists here today. You guys did a fantastic job.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
Yep, and we will have notes and everything that we'll be distributing to everybody in attendance here. So keep your eye on your email for that. And with that, I'm assuming I can just wrap up unless Nick has anything he'd like to add in.
Nope, go for it. You've said it all already. Thank you very much.
Great. So we will see you again next week, but keep in mind, you can forward any thoughts that you have to us on future panel concepts. And keep in mind that our weekly newsletter has a lot of updated current consumer behavior information. And that's something that's super critical to have as you're going through these planning weeks leading into the coming season. So let us know how we can continue to serve you. And thank you so much again for being here today.
Thanks, Kristin.
Thanks,
Thank
Thanks
you.
everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Have a great day.